hello everyone, and good evening from the Philippines. Good morning or good afternoon from the other people uh, who are not from this time zone. But yeah, so hello everyone, and welcome to Figma Friday. This is our event for Q3, and just some event guidelines, I guess, officially like go into it. So here here are just some reminders. So be respectful, be thoughtful, and be cool. So and also since we are friends of Figma Philippines, we follow the Figma Code of Conduct. So that's just something you can look at it at figma.com/code of conduct. You can just read those and observe those, and we'll be good. Okay. So now today we're gonna be having this event called Designer Variants. So it's a conversation between designers in different work settings. So yes. And now I'll just be introducing first Friends of Figma Philippines. So here we are. Friends of Figma Philippines, we started, I think, like 2018 or something. We were holding like meetups before, and it was really just like a group of people that just wanted to share our love for Figma for everyone within the Philippines or like, everywhere. So here we all are. So that's me on the top left. Then we have Rain Liao, Red Rivera, Anjo, Sardena, and Eric Luciano, Paul Sabandal, and Jelvin Paz. I still don't know how to pronounce his last name properly. I'm sorry, Jelvin, if you're here in the color, if you see this. But yeah, so that's all of us so far. We are your Figma community advocates. And now I'll be introducing our speakers. So first are our panelists. So first we have representing the startup scene. Yeah, so Richard is a community builder and designer currently working at the San Francisco-based startup called Makisu, where he leads the UI and UX design for all of their products. In the past, he has done design work for edtech and AR startups. Then now for our corporate representative, wow, ganun eh. Corporate representative. Yes, we have Stella Pangilinan. So Stella is a designer by trade and storyteller at heart. She is currently a UX designer at Summit Media and a fellow at UXPH, areas where she advocates her passions in building design cultures and community. If she's not fixing her portfolio, she's either reading or playing tennis. So there we go. And for our representative from the freelance world, we have Miss Angela Salud Chua. So Angela is the founder of Tofi Nut Design Studio, helping startups with their digital products, including a prop tech company where she's the design lead since 2008. She's also building Note Shelf on the side. So there we go with Angela. Then lastly, but not the least, we have Monica Soliman, who is a UX design director at Densu Jaime Sifu. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce that correctly, but I hope I did. With a background in advertising that spans over 8 years. She leads the design direction for digital products and creative innovations to deliver an end-to-end user experience for brands such as Meralco, Smart, Ajinomoto, and MaxiCare. So there. So if you want to keep in touch, here are our links. So yeah, we'll just be sending this in the chat. But after this, so you can find us on Facebook. We have our page, we have our group. We're also on Twitter. Those are our only places where we are, and also this bevy. So yeah. So now we can actually officially start this chikahan or this discussion with all of the designers you can see right now on screen. So yay! Hello everyone. Mic's on. I guess.
Ay, hello, hello.
Hello. Hello,
Yun pala ang
everyone.
signal namin.
Yes. So okay. So we'll go first with. I guess I did introduce you already. But I guess what you could start with is if we could have everyone describe what their work setting is. So how is it like working in startup, corporate, and agency, and in freelance, and then also share a bit on how you ended up in your setting and how was the process of like getting there. So maybe we can start with Monica. Then
Okay.
I'll just call you one by one. Okay, so let's go.
Sige. Hi everyone. So I'm Monica. I work in Dentsu Jaime Saifu. So it's an award-winning ad agency. It's okay, Chi. So it's an award-winning ad agency focused on creative and tech-driven ideas. So in my team, I'm part of DigitX. So it's the UX and innovations arm of Dentsu. So parang kami yung parang takbuhan ng mga creatives when it comes to mga tech ideas and website related questions. So we are a multidisciplinary team of designers, project managers, and creative technologists. But we're actually a small team. So it's a bit of a challenge when it comes to the workload, lalo na when you're working in an ad agency. So everything is fast-paced. But of course, so with the help of collaborative tools such as Figma, so we are able to get the job done. Yun. So, um, paano ko napunta sa Dentsu Jaime Saifu? So, um, I began my career as an art director in Wonderman Manila, and then eventually transitioned to becoming a digital art director slash UX designer sa Dentsu. So from there, parang from scratch ko na siya, parang on the spot ko na natutunan yung UX design. Ayan.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, nice. Okay, so I guess we can move on to Richard.
Hello, hello. All right, so yung question is, what do we do at work, no?
Yeah,
Or what do I do
describe
at
what
work?
describe your work setting. What is it like working in a startup?
Oh, okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah, as she mentioned, I work at Makisu. We're a San Francisco and Philippine-based company, and we are a startup. We started around, I think 2019, 2020, sumakto sa pandemic. And yeah, I am the only product designer there because such is life. And basically startup life is very very how should I say it, it's very very flexible in all of the good and bad context. um Startup life as a designer, I generally don't get to really dive deep into stuff like just focusing on web design or UI design, or just focusing on UX research. As the first design hire, I really need to be a generalist designer, in the sense that I also do I do the UI design, I do some UX research, and I do a lot of UX strategy as well, because since I am I am the only designer, I work very closely with the CEO, who's also the head of engineering. And we I pretty much have long talks with him regarding where the direction of our products are going, what products should we build in the future. And yeah, it's very exciting, especially someone who came from an agency setup, or medyo agency, medyo client facing setup. But now this is like my first time working in a SaaS, software as a service company, and I really get to focus on a bunch of products that we launch through the company. So yeah, it's pretty exciting as a startup. As a startup designer, you get to experience a lot of different things, and like you also get exposed to a bunch of different industries. Like I started working in the company. Our product was it was kind of like a platform where Filipino freelancers can get connected to potential customers in the US. And now we launched another product a few months ago, which was essentially server hosting for the game Valheim, if you're familiar with that. So we started valheimserverhosting.com, and it was a pretty much very fun experience for both me and my boss, because it wasn't our comfort. We were outside of our comfort zone. And yeah, so Stella asked, "Do you wear hats outside of design?" Um, I'm yeah, medyo. The yung pinaka hat outside of design that I wear is really the strategy side. So yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. So while I'm fixing my webcam, maybe Miss there. Okay, now I'm back. Okay, so hello. Thank you for that, Richard. So now we'll move on to Angela.
Hi guys. Okay, so where did I start my journey? I basically was in corporate for maybe like a couple of years, locally, and then on the side I was doing design work. This was more than a decade ago, so it's really not something that anybody considered as work, being in app design specifically. So it was a difficult conversation, I guess, with people. Okay, why are you leaving a stable job to start your own design business? It isn't as common as it is today. And then eventually it just happened that I freelanced my way doing things that I wanted to do, I guess. So it's basically just app design at the time, and then web app design came after. Years later, I guess at the time I got clients in that time period, and then in which I still retain them today. So as she mentioned earlier, I'm also the lead designer for a property company based in Singapore, and basically we provide software for hotels and residential properties for their businesses. And then as a freelance slash studio designer, it's really managing a different types of people in different types of businesses, ranging from the traditional corporate people where they're a little more by the book, I would say, and then also the fast-paced nature of startups. So it's juggling many hats. Locally, I've worked. Maybe it was 5 years ago with Metromart. I helped them launch their um, iOS app first, and then Android followed soon after, and then also their web. Um, yeah, and then aside from that, it's 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 a rush also to just build things on your own. So I also, on the side, I've been building an app called Noteshelf. It's basically for iOS, and then we partnered with Android and Samsung also along the way. So if you get a chance and you like note taking, handwriting, it's more like handwritten notes really. So do try it out. It's just a side app that we are building, and it's doing well. It's just for students basically. So it's just that as a freelance designer slash studio designer, it's really just wearing a lot of different hats. And much like Richard, is really being a generalist and also being the accounts person as well. So it's a busy life, but it's a fun one, I guess.
That's nice to hear. Okay. When did Note Shelf start? Like when did you start working on it, if ever?
2000, well, when did the iPad come out? Siguro 2010, thereabouts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool,
it's
cool.
been
Okay.
it's been around for a while.
Oh,
There have been
nice.
a bunch of versions after.
Ah, nice. Okay. Yeah, kasi para maybe people could try. Yeah, kasi para naisip ko it would be bagay for the pandemic. Because
Yeah, it got an uptick because of the online learning. So teachers have ended up using it and doing their Zoom sessions using it as a whiteboard also. So yeah.
yeah. Okay, cool. That's nice. Thanks for sharing, Angela. Okay, then lastly for this round, we have Stella.
Hi guys. So yeah, super interesting to hear about you guys, Richard, Monica, Angela. I think I represent the other end of the spectrum, right? Corporate design, the corporate setting. So I currently work at Summit Media. It's the largest digital lifestyle network in the Philippines. It's under the conglomerate of JG Summit. So that's a lot of brands to work with, a lot of products to handle, a lot of audiences, and a lot of data as well, right? So Summit Media actually used to be a publishing house, but 2 years ago they had a shift in leadership, which led to this radical shift like a digital transformation where they've decided to stop print publishing and migrate everything online. So that's been an interesting process, and naturally that calls for the need of a UX team. So right now, the setup of our team is that it's in its grassroots foundation building stage. So I'm actually the first designer hired in our team, our small growing team of five at the moment. The others being UI focused and my managers, no. So we're a growing team. We're in a very interesting foundation building stage where we're experimenting with different design processes, different protocols to build our own standard protocols as well. So there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of documentation, kind of what you mentioned earlier, Chi. We do that on Notion. That has been our saving grace. So getting a corporate company to move into Notion has been like a major feat for our team. So tiny victory dance there. And to quickly answer the question of how I got here, this is actually my first job. So kind of similar to what you said, Angela, I'm starting out my career in a corporate position. So hello to all the other budding designers or fresh grads looking for their first job. Like I was not that far away from where you guys are right now. So yeah, that's kind of the setup at Summit. Yeah, that's my answer to the question, Chi.
Okay, thanks Stella for sharing. And just to relate, I also did start in corporate. So I think a lot of us do start in that stable setting, or I guess the corporate setting. Though if you do start elsewhere, that's fine as well. It's just gonna be a different ride altogether. Okay.
Mood pag sa
Yeah.
iba nag-start.
Kasi diba, Richard, you didn't, like, you started in an agency,
Startup
setting,
startup na nga tas medyo
startup.
agency setting pa.
Oo.
So
Yeah,
solid.
hard mode ka agad. Pero fun naman, I guess, or like may mga lessons learned along the way. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now we'll just go and talk about maybe the day-to-day activities that you have in your own teams, or I guess kung hindi man design team, if you're a designer of one, I don't know which one of I forget if sino yung design. Ay, si Richard. Yeah. Other than that, does everyone else like have a design team like kasama na co-designers? I guess I would like for you all to share how collaboration is like within your work settings, and I guess who you also regularly work with. So, hindi naman lang din yun puro designers, at least, lalo na in our context like UX, we have to talk to like a lot of people. So, would love for you all to share that process so far. And I guess you could also share what your company size or team size is. So, if maliit lang kayo, I guess a company, and then if you also have like if it's like a really big, I guess, yung team, then so we can start with that. Now I will call on Stella muna, so we're gonna go back from the ikot.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so our team size, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're not that big yet. We are actively hiring. Hi, guys. But yeah, so we are a team of five at the moment. We have a UX manager, a UX lead, a senior UI designer, and then there are two UX designers. That's me and my very good coworker and friend Isa. So, sorry, Chi, just to quickly repeat the question, no, it's what we do in our day to day and what that looks like with our team, no?
Yeah. So
Great.
who do
Yeah.
you regularly work with as well?
Right, right. Great question. So the setup kasi at the company I'm at right now is we are allocating a specific person for a very particular project. So I, for example, am helping out with a very specific product team, leading their UX design, working directly with their developers. It's kind of funny. It's like the setup is like a startup of some sorts, but we're operating within like corporate setting. So I would say that in this little team that I'm working with on this particular product, I work very closely with developers, our performance marketer, our product manager. So that's been kind of interesting because I don't think that's the traditional setup and like the standard or basic corporate setup that I've heard at least from other designers. But with my actual UX team, we do have our weekly alignments. I don't know if you guys, corporate jargon, right? The alignments every week to make sure everyone's on the same page. We do try to have stand-ups so we are like on track with what everyone's working on. Again, Notion helps with our documentation. We do our retrospectives on FigJam. We try to do them on Figma as well. It's like this fight right now between the superior whiteboard, if it's Miro or FigJam, right? Yeah, that's kind of the setup. So we do have that independent avenue to be a UX designer, in the sense that we do the baseline tasks from user research all the way to handoffs. But then within our team, we have that aspect of the foundation building where we have cadences every week. We get together, we talk about the blockers that we have, the blockers we're experiencing. We come together for retros. So it's a really interesting mix. Yeah. I hope that answered the question, no? Or were you looking for specific?
Yeah, you actually answered the question. I guess so how many are you again in your
We're
team?
five. We're five and
Five.
growing. Can't stress
Okay.
that enough, guys.
You're growing. Okay. Yeah, so yes, for anyone who'd like to start in a corporate setting, you can apply to Stella's place. So you work with 5 people so far within your team, and then elsewhere,
Right.
how many like the departments, I guess, or teams you um touch base with or like work with?
Yeah, that's a super good question. I'm interested to hear what Angela thinks of this, because since she worked in corporate also, right? But the departments that I touch base with mostly, if they're not the UX team, right? Because that's kind of like my safe space. I go to them and I'm like, guys, I don't know what to do anymore. Help, right? Like, how do I get management buy-in? How do I talk to admin? Like, how do I pass this memo? Like those specific things, I kind of run to my UX team for that. But other departments that I've touched base with, of course, we have the developers. I talk to QA as well. They give me a lot of insight when we're looking at wireframes and we're doing user testing. I talk very closely with our product manager because they're involved in building the product backlog and planning the sprints, what that's going to look like. So yeah, I don't think I mentioned that earlier. Like, we are like this conglomerate transitioning into this agile scrum setup. So there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of unlearning for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm interested to know what Angela thinks about this, because you had the corporate experience as well. So I don't know, like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, before I wasn't even into design. When I was in corporate, it was really the marketing side of it or the business side of it. So it was really a shift when I just wanted to dive into design independently at that. So it wasn't really design per se, but we were touching points with agency and then the different clients or the businesses of the corporation. Right now, I work with many teams, as you could imagine. So I work with teams that are based in remotely all over, I guess. And then also in the studio, I work with independent designers when we're working with startups. Pretty much my day-to-day is a bunch of people talking and touch basing on Slack, and then hopefully less Zoom calls and less Meet calls. But pretty much it's basically independent way of life. If you want to go into freelance design, it's really setting your own time, setting your own deadlines as well, and it doesn't stop on Fridays, if I were to be frank, but it's up to you if how you want to do that work-life balance. So with the teams that I work with, one that is based in Singapore and India, so the time difference isn't that big, so it's fine. I work closely with engineers. I work closely with the marketing team as well. With that company, we do the product design of the digital side of the hotel. So it's basically like an iPad app in the hotel room. It's if I were to just boil it down to one sentence, it's that. But we're managing a lot of hotels and a lot of technically older people trying to buy into new tech. So that's the juggling thing that we do. So in terms of the mini design team there, but there's like a boatload of engineers. And then for my other teams, I guess it's really just a handful of marketing people. And then I'm just trying to manage them and really just empowering people at this point, because you set up your base well, and it's really just independence throughout.
Okay, that's great to hear. So thank you, Stella and Angela, for sharing so far. It's interesting for me the shift. Though I do understand because I also came from corporate. So what Stella is mentioning is not foreign to me kasi that's also what we tried to do, at least sa side namin. Or tried, emphasis on tried. So anyway, I will move on to the chart. So maybe you can share like who do you usually work with and what's your day-to-day, what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, I actually work with everyone in the company, down from operations, sales, HR, marketing, and even the engineers. Since I am the product designer, like a generalist, but at that, I really have to uh, give the effort na I'll bridge all of the links between operations, sales, engineering, etc. Because for some of our products, like our main product, Marty, um, one of our stakeholders is also our operations or our marketing team. So it's important for me to also bridge, constantly be in contact with them and ask them how are you doing, whatever. Basta keeping tabs on them and basically communicating with them. Generally, as a startup designer, like regardless of company, this is really what happens. Like you cannot afford to be in a silo by yourself because for anyone else who has worked as a solo designer in a company, they'll quickly realize that since you're the only designer, you also have to rely on other people, and they'll also help you do your design work for you. Like for example, since I'm a designer and I focus on everything, I constantly get help from marketing, from sales, from our CEO, in terms of like the research for our product, because they are the ones who are constantly in contact with our customers. They are the ones manning the customer service channels. And as a designer, I really don't have the bandwidth to deal with that and set individual research sessions or focus groups or interviews with these people. So having a good relationship with sales, marketing, and even engineering, because they also do some customer support work as well. It helps my work as a designer, and it helps me feel not so alone, especially since startup, as a fully remote startup. I didn't mention that we don't have a physical office. As a fully remote startup, you really need to um, make the effort and really connect with all of your workmates, just so that you don't feel alone in your work, and so that you don't feel alone. You also make friends, because there is a tendency for designers to really be in a silo and focus only on UI design work, or sometimes become medyo snobbish na parang, oh, UX should only be done by the UXers, or UI should only be done by the UI designers, right? And as a startup designer, you really have to break all of your current assumptions about the field, and just try to do everything and connect with everyone, even if it's not strictly like your work.
Hey, thank you for sharing, Richard, for that. And I can relate because that's what I'm also going through now as I start in a startup coming from corporate. Okay, so we have that. Now we have Monica to share her experience from an agency standpoint. So go ahead, Monica.
Okay. At Dentsu, I think we're around 100 employees. But
Wow.
in our team, in UX team, Digit X, so I 8 lang kami. So,
Okay.
parang kayo, konti lang din. So, we're also hiring.
Ah, yes, let's go.
So,
Let's plug those things.
yeah. So, I'm the UX designer, and then we have 2 creative technologists. We have 4 business design managers and chief technologist. And my day to day is a mix of management and design work. So I start the day by checking my emails and attending meetings just so I could get it done na in the morning and allot my time in the afternoon for design work and ideation. With meetings naman, usually these are mga briefings, internals, if you're familiar with the term. It's very an ad agency term. So it's a meeting to check on the progress before the deadline or client presentation. And then yung mga client presentation itself. And then specific naman to our team, so we have stand-up meetings, mga retrospectives, and end of the week calls, which is mas casual na and non-work related. And then every other Wednesday, we have a Wellness Wednesday, so that's for our mental health. And then for my role naman, I set the design direction for our UX projects. So I'm involved in a lot of daily UX activities like research, wireframing, designing, prototyping, and testing. And then I also oversee our projects, approving our work, and managing our deliverables, and doing initiatives. So we also do a lot of brainstorming, especially when we get project briefs that are not purely UX work. So these are digital campaign briefs in collaboration with other creatives. So we would ideate on tech-driven ideas and execute a prototype as proof of concept. And one recent work that we did was the Smart BTS digital light stick, if you've seen it. So it's a microsite that turns your mobile phone into a digital light stick that can only be accessed if you're a smart subscriber. And it also auto syncs with the smart BTS launch video. So yun, that's just one of the things that we do aside from our UX projects.
It's nice. So so the light stick, does that mean it's connected to like being a fan of certain or ano, yun ba?
For
Tama bang yun?
BTS.
BTS. Okay.
So
Labas
they
na
have
yung ganyan.
uh,
Okay, cool. Okay. Oh, that's great. So for we have like a lot of different teams, but mostly I think for everyone, we really do work with a lot of other people that's not usually just ourselves or just like like within our even with a team of designers, we still go beyond our space. So
yes.
that's great to hear. Okay, yes. Okay, nice. So I guess to add to the day-to-day activities question, what would your workflow be from starting a project? See, Stella is like, oh my god, ano na so what's your workflow from starting a project to executing plans to delivering output? So I guess this pertains to mostly timelines as well, like managing, like we have the day to day, but then now let's kind of look at the slightly bigger picture, not so much like months, maybe weeks or days. Depends on you. So I guess I'll first call on, ibahin ko naman yung um, si Angela. So, siya na muna mag-start. So, can you share your workflow?
For me, it's since I work on a bunch of projects that are in different industries. So more or less, let's say I get a design brief from a client. Um, Recently, what we did was like a rewards app for a company called Liho. I don't know if that's what it's how it's pronounced. It basically it's like Gongcha, the Gongcha here in the Philippines, but in Singapore they rebranded it as Liho. They have a bunch of brands, and then basically it's kind of like a grab wallet for their multitude of brands. So talking in terms of the process that we did there, it was probably like a 2 to 3 week exercise. It was really fast, and working in like a studio, it's really like that. You get a brief, you get down to it. You don't take a bunch of meetings to every day, because really it eats up time. That's kind of our. It's really just fast paced kind of work, because at the end of the day you get to the next one as well. So for that, really, what it starts with a bunch of discovery things. So you research about the brand, you research about their competitors, you research about their market, and also who their users are. Basically the same for everything. Personally, what I really do is take a bunch and bunch of screenshots everywhere and really just dump them into a Figma file. To be honest, like everything, all the flows documented, so you can just easily reference them. It doesn't eat up your memory. It's just online. It's so fun. So it's just a bunch of screenshots that I take, and it really helps me get the flow started. Whether that's competitive products directly or just in the same space generally, even if it's not a direct competitor, it really helps. And then aside from that, also there's a let's say it's an app for this particular project I'm mentioning, the Liho one, the Mobin design, it's really a bunch of UI patterns that you can also look into. So somebody out there has already thought of a bunch of flows, and a bunch of them have already failed. And it's just a valuable tool also to discover, or to actually just study it, because at some point they've gone through a bunch of testing. The app is out. Some users have given feedback. App Store reviews are aplenty. So it's really just a bunch of information that you can take before you actually get to the wireframe process. So for 1 to 2 weeks, that's just what it's really all about. And then towards the end, you just incorporate the stakeholders, you incorporate the engineers as early as possible, because it really catches a bunch of things that only experience will tell you. Like I read the other day that it's really amazing how the engineers really think of edge cases like at the drop of a hat. Like it's really you present them a problem, and then immediately they say, okay, but what happens if it's like this? And then you just don't even consider it for a moment, and then eventually you learn to at each level of wireframe, at each screen that you make, okay, what will my engineer actually ask me about this? And you get to train yourself to think of edge cases as you go along, and it's really helpful that not just at the end you realize, oh, okay, I messed up this flow because I didn't ask a bunch of people. So it's really just a collaborative process across any of the teams that we work with. So that's kind of the overall picture of how we work. And then at the end, it never stops anyway. So in our in our studio, really, I guess it varies, right? So for others, they get to launch a product, and then that's it. They probably, the startup builds an in-house team and calls it a day. They raise funding, they hire people, and then that's it. But for some reason, the clients that we work with, we kind of keep in touch with. So it's really just an iteration process for years and years. And then it's also a growing model, I guess, or like an opportunity to learn. So it's really just round and round it goes. That's our overall picture, I guess. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that actually helps. Okay. So that's a lot of things, and I love that you start with mood boarding, because that's, yeah, screenshots really help as well, since you don't want to reinvent the wheel if it's already been done. So that there's that. Okay. Now I will change the order. Now I'll call on Richard to share their workflow. Yeah, from starting a project to executing plans to delivering output. Yeah, go.
So, in terms of starting a project, we are pretty unique. In terms of, like, we don't really do agile. We have a pretty unique way of working. It's called a shape up. Not sure if other people are familiar with that, but essentially we work for 6 weeks on a given set of tasks, or a given set of um, things to do for a specific cycle, and then after that we have 2 weeks to rest, to plan, and to fix any bugs. And in terms of my personal design workflow in that 6 week cycle, for the first 2 weeks, that's when I'm really in sync with everyone, with engineering, with the rest of the product team, because for every project that we start, I am the number one blocker. Because if they don't have screen designs, or at least the skeleton of how something works, the engineering won't be able to do anything. So the first 2 weeks of any given cycle is pretty crucial for me. or rather pretty crucial for how our company works. Now, in terms of my personal workflow, in terms of like designing using Figma, um, it used to be that I just did what I can do in Figma. Since yun nga, I am accepting the fact that the products that I design now might be scrapped in the next cycle, in the next year, or in the next month. I don't commit too much on creating like a style guide. I don't commit too much on creating a design system or what have you. I don't even create that comprehensive na components. Even though for some designers it is a mortal sin to not take the extra 5 minutes to set up the components. But for me as a designer, what really matters to me is to get the ideas going, to check if the design is feasible, and most importantly, to create the design, the minimum viable design for product to build for the product team to build the product. And if the product is successful, then I'll build upon it, and I'll refactor the design, and I'll spend time on fixing everything. But if it's not successful, like if we suddenly pivot, then I'll gladly throw away those shoddy designs that I made before. I don't really go like I'm a big fan of reusing existing design patterns, uh because there's absolutely nothing wrong with copying existing design patterns from other products, as long as you don't like just literally copy paste it. um and yeah, for this cycle we're going to build a new product, and I'm going to try out using a UI kit for our new product. So that's going to be something to explore for me in the startup space. Like before kasi we created all of our designs from scratch. So if I needed a table, I design a table, which we all know is hard to do. If I need a profile page, if I need a settings page, I have to design it from scratch. But now, since we bought the UI kit, we're expecting to finish a fully cohesive and good and well designed product in like 1 week or 2 weeks, and then be able to launch the product in the same 6 week cycle. So yeah, designing in a startup, you have to really you have to let loose. You have to not be very strict about how design is done. You should be open to breaking some conventions. Like it's okay to not make a very comprehensive component system, because at the end of the day, the designs that you do, you're not really sure if that product will be scrapped because of a business decision. Like regardless if how good your research is, minsan mawawalan bigla ng money yung startup, right? So at that point, research can't help you. So I'm as a startup designer and as a generalist, you really have to be loose. You have to really be accommodating and flexible in terms of how you design your products.
Thanks for sharing that, Richard. And I understand what you mean. Kasi that has also happened to me before na parang I designed something like really, really nice. Or was that like end-to-end POC, proof of concept? But then it got scrapped because budget, because hindi na siya itutuloy or something. So that was kind of heartbreaking, but it was also a lesson learned for me. So good for you that you're sharing it here. By the way, can you share what the toolkit or the UI kit you got for your
Um, Wait lang, let me search.
sige.
Basta
Okay.
it's a UI kit for Tailwind. Teka, isa-search ko lang yung
Yeah, it's
Tailwind
Tailwind, diba?
UI kits. Tapos
Yeah.
lalabas yun sa
Tapos
Google.
yeah. Tapos it's on Figma din kasi I think it's paid. So yeah, you have to buy it lang naman. So there. Yeah, Tailwind. Ayan, the Tailwind
So
gang
yeah, wait.
is
Let me
appearing in
just
chat.
open. Nakalagay kasi yun sa namin, sa Figma namin.
Yeah.
Flowbyte. It's called
Flow
Flowbyte.
Byte.
Yeah.
Yan.
Yun
Okay.
yung, even though it's still in early access, like that UI kit, I preferred getting this UI kit for our company instead of the Tailwind UI kit. Kasi I think this is the only UI kit for Tailwind that actually has a Figma library. The UI components that are coded in Tailwind will be released around September. So, wala, tiis na lang muna kami.
So
Pero
you're
yung
also
yeah, we'll also be coding it up since our cycle will finish before the end of September. But Yeah, yung important kasi is parang flow by it. I mean, the entire point of UI kits is that for some people it eliminates the use of designers. Pero for some engineers, they're really really bad at design and they need someone to stitch up the UI kit. So something like Flowbyte that offers a Figma version of the UI kit is really really helpful because for me as a designer, I don't have to invest too much in creating entirely new UI components. I can just drag and drop everything. And on the side of the engineer, they don't have to create new code for the design that I do, right? So that's something to consider as well, even if you're in an agency or in a corporate setup.
Then we know the interests in budget and finance related things. But anyway, I will let Monica and Stella talk about those because I am not the focus here. So first, let's start with Monica. Share the agency side of things. What's your workflow naman? Yeah.
Okay. We applied the double diamond process. Actually, meron pa kaming own version, triple diamond process. So may added D dun.
For triple diamond, nice. Sige,
Yes,
go.
thanks to Dom. Ayun. So, when we get the brief, we start a kickoff meeting and do the research and then we work with other specialists then in our company. So we have planners, strategists, and we also have CRM specialists to help us with the research and strategy. And then that's the time when we do the define stage, and then yung mga problem statements, content strategy, information architecture, and user flows. And then we present to the client to get their feedback. Para by that time pa lang, hindi pa kami mag-allot ng time sa design. Check muna nila yung buong architecture ng website. And then once approved, so that's the time when we can start with the design. So usually, we start with the wireframes, and then sometimes we also present some design studies, mga options pa lang, kasi minsan may mga client din na mas nakaka-appreciate na kagad ng visual. Yun. So we let them approve a study, and then that's the time that we can cascade na yung design sa other pages. Once approved, so nandun na yung challenge of having your work get approved by a lot of stakeholders from the client side, from different departments pa and different heads in their departments. So once approved, syempre maraming revisions and iterations hanggang sa ma-approve siya. So that's the time that we look for the supplier to develop it. And then we just set some weekly meetings to check on the progress. And then sinasabay na rin namin yung testing para ready na for the launch.
Okay, cool. How what's I guess if you could share parang what's the shortest time that you've spent from start to like end to end, start to finish of launching something, I guess. With all of with the triple diamond process then, I guess, or
Well, hindi rin lahat na apply yung process since
yeah.
yung agency super fast-paced lahat. Usually, we have projects na 2 to 3 months lang kailangan mo nang ma-launch. But we do it in phases.
Okay, so phases din yun na lang ginagawa if ever time is not on our side.
Yes.
Well, time is usually not on our side as well. Depende na lang. But yes, okay. Okay. So thank you for sharing, Monica. Now we have Stella. So go ahead and share.
So much for sharing that, guys. I definitely learned a lot, and I will be reading up on Shape Up. That was my first time hearing that ever. So I'm not going to reiterate what Monica said. Like our team tries to practice that framework as well, the double diamond, where we kind of, rapidly open ourselves to ideas, and then we kind of diverge, funneling with the constraints of the project, the brief that we have, the discussions with developers. I don't want to like reiterate anyone else's point, but I really wanted to highlight what Angela was saying earlier about the entire framework, sorry, being collaborative and how important that is. Like there were multiple times where I would go on a design sprint and create. So similar to what you said, Chi, I'd create designs that would turn out to not be feasible because of back end dependencies, or because of budget, or because it's too far down the roadmap for now. Dot dot dot. Right. So I think like bringing people in, like as a designer, is a big part of our job as well, and involving all these different perspectives, whether you're an engineer, the product manager, the QA, the QA lead as well, like getting everyone in that same discussion as you're ideating, getting their feedback constantly has been like a really a big game changer for me and my own personal workflow. So yeah, I think the challenge that we have, it's very similar to what Herbie, I hope I pronounced that correctly, mentioned earlier, right? Like what does that look like in terms of time constraints in a corporate culture? At least from my perspective, since I'm working in a very specific project that is entirely dependent on what my product manager defines, like, you know, our sprint lengths to look like. So what I'm saying is it's dependent on the project that you have, right? Some projects have larger, more extensive budgets and are willing to experiment. Other projects don't have the data to support, you know, more monies to back up, you know, better designs. So I think like the key there really is understanding what the business objectives are of the product you're working on, right? Like what can we work with? Understanding the back end dependencies, like how much can we actually do, like how much can we actually build, and from there, like gauging, okay, I know what our constraints are. You can come up with cost efficient designs or designs that can be scalable. So I hope this doesn't sound like so much jargon to like budding designers, especially. But I think if there's anything that we all agree on, it's that, you know, this entire workflow has to be collaborative. And the more perspectives you get involved as early as possible, like what Angela said, there's so much more room for learning. That has been my biggest learning, guys, in these past 2 months. Like in all of my retrospectives with my team, I'm like, I have learned that the developers are my best friends. Like they are my buddies. They have to be with me from start to finish. Because if not, I will come up with disconnected designs that aren't, you know, that aren't taking into consideration what our team is capable of doing, right? So yeah, that is my response to that question. Design frameworks for life, like follow a framework, right, and experiment with that. Iterate your own workflow in the same way you would iterate on a project. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Stella, for sharing. And good thing that you mentioned that developers are your best friend or a designer's best friend because yeah, wag yung awayin yung developers nyo. Walang mararating yung gagawin nyo. Kasi wala
I'd
eh.
like to add something to that
Sure,
because
go.
at No Shelf, we kind of just hired really a fresh from masters person who's really new in tech. She was just doing some like medical what's that? Parang it's more like medical jargon books that she transcribes. So really not a tech person, and just we kind of threw her into UX research supposedly, but then eventually we pushed her a little bit to project management. And I would say one of the secrets of a team would be a very personable project manager where nobody's mad at them, even if they're just so annoying every single day, right? But nobody's mad at them. They keep everyone in check. They relay comments from one side to the other without anybody's feelings getting hurt. So it's not really always about the designers or the developers even. Sometimes the person in between is really, really, really key. And if you can get someone like that in your team, everything else super easy afterwards.
Agree. We also got that before, like in my first job. We had this product manager that was super charismatic and it really helped when we were talking with devs kasi di sila magagalit sa amin. Like if we're introducing something new, hey, we're gonna redesign this bit, like or change a bit of this and it's gonna be a bit hard. But yeah, and he just does it really well versus like other people. You really see the difference between personality, I guess. Okay, so I'll move on to a next question. So what are some common problems, I guess, or maybe you can just mention like one or two common problems that you find yourself facing in your design setting, and what are the ways that your team has resolved them? Okay, I will now choose. I guess we go to Stella muna. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Go lang.
process pa. Which problem do I pick? No kidding. No, grabe naman. No, guys. As a designer, really, we're problem solvers, right? So if you're not solving any problems, you might want to think of like, the challenges that you're taking up in your own job, right? So anyway, I think one common problem that I'm sure everyone here can agree with is if the team isn't aligned with the goal, right, of the project or the design, the product at hand. And I think sometimes it's possible for a designer to, again, like I mentioned earlier, to be disconnected from the goal of the design, and to get so kind of caught up in a solution that we forget the problem we're trying to solve in the first place. So yeah, I would say that lack of alignment or that lack of communication can be a problem, and that can reflect in bad designs or designs that aren't feasible. So was there a second segment of that question, Chi, like how to solve it?
Yeah, how do you solve it? Or what were some ways that you and your team has resolved that issue?
Oh, exactly what I said earlier then. Like bringing people in the design process, even if they aren't designers by trade. Like we try to do like a crazy eight feedback session with a developer, which was, it not technically how you would approach it, but it was so interesting to test like all these random ideas we had against like what we can actually build, right? So I think just bringing people in the conversation as early as possible, like what Angela said, really helps with that alignment. There it is again, that corporate
Man.
alignment, guys. Let's align
Yes.
on this.
Align center. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Stella, for sharing that. Next we can go to Monica. Okay.
For us, I think it's time constraint since we're
Okay,
working
yeah.
on multiple projects all at the same time. So it's really hard to focus on a single project and make sure na walang sasabit. That's why we do, for our solution naman, we do weekly QAs, check with developers, yun. And then we really make sure na there's a written, an email na approved yung design para lang wala ng conflict if na-launch na siya.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, emails. Yeah, kasi ang hirap nun kapag biglang, bakit yan yung nilabas? Nako, away na yun. But yeah,
Yes.
I understand. Okay. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Monica. Okay. So now we go to Angela naman.
For us, over the past 1.5 years of COVID, it's really been honesty, capacity. Getting work is not really the problem. Getting additional things in the pipeline hasn't been a problem, thankfully. But it's really just saying no to things that are so tempting to say yes to, whether it be like an entirely new product or just a new add-on feature to an existing one. Sometimes as a designer, you just want to agree, right? It's kind of exciting to make new things, but the hardest for us, or like the trouble for us, is really finding that right moment to say no or to push back a little bit, especially for the quote unquote MVPs that just get expanded every day. It gets expanded, so it's that for us, that's the hardest part.
Understand that because scope creep is really like a common concern talaga with things. Okay, yeah. So habang nag-ayos na naman ako ng webcam ko, I'm sorry, nawawala-wala ako. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Angela, kasi that's also really something that people face, like kung saan ka man, wherever you are working in. So when do you usually find the best? Like, how do you usually think about, or paano ko ba sabihin? Parang, what factors do you consider when you wanna say no to something? Yan nga. So, to say,
Yeah,
no, ayoko na. No.
yeah, it depends. Let's say it's a product. I saw Miramark is here. I'm actually working with him with a startup based in the US. It's a social platform for Gen Z. The typical problem that we have here would be the founders are super imaginative, and it gets to, okay, can we add this? Or what about this? So uh, it's kind of super interesting to manage, I would say. But eventually, you just have to, as a designer, you have a tendency to either shut it off because you're gonna change a bunch of flows again, yet again, or also get excited because there's something new. So I think that's it's that fine balance of listening to why they're asking for that change rather than just like face value, knowing what the question is, or like knowing what they're asking for, because usually the reason is somewhere in between. It's somewhere like they want it, their customers want it, or just it's just exciting and it has to be not done yet. So it's just, but it's just that push and pull.
Yeah, agree. And what Anjo said in the chat, listening skills.
Yeah.
So yeah, true.
And
Yeah.
also saying no in the like the politest way possible, or like it's really a skill that you have to manage if you're front facing to the client.
Yeah, agree so much. Kasi it's gonna be hard if you just say no, baka, like, as in, no, medyo, baka ma-off na sila sa'yo or something. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, Angela. And now we go to Richard.
Yung pinaka problema namin, our biggest problem in Makisu is really our capacity, and to a certain extent our budget. Makisu is a bootstrapped startup by our CEO. We don't have venture funding, so we can't really grow the team as much as we'd like. And yun yeah, considering our team structure, we have 3 engineers and 1 designer. There are certain and 2 products with a new one possibly coming soon. So we have a very very big bottleneck in terms of being able to push out designs, being able to push out quality code. Um, and honestly, the only way we could try to fix that problem is to dictate the pace at which we release our products, our product updates. That's why I'm very much a fan of the shape up approach of building products. Is because we since we are a bootstrapped company and we still have some gas in the tank, we can afford to slow down the pace of our cycles by way of reducing the amount of work that we commit to each specific cycle. Like for example, for this cycle, I only have a few design items, so I can really focus on creating a quality design instead of trying to rush everything every week, just to be able to meet the handoff or be able to hand it off to the developers. So yeah, that's pretty much a problem that that you can pretty much encounter in every startup. It's always one form of another of the same problem. Oh, we don't have enough clients. We don't have any or rather we don't have enough money. We don't have enough runway to hire another designer, engineer. So it really becomes a game of managing resources on the side of the CEO, and it also becomes a game of knowing how to distribute your effort as a designer, as an engineer, as an employee of the of an early stage startup or just a startup in general. Which is why yun nga, I mentioned earlier that I don't really go hard on committing myself to creating a design system, a style guide, or components right at the start, because my main focus as a designer in my current company is to get things out very quickly and try to meet all of my committed tasks within the 6 weeks that we have. And if it becomes successful, and then we can improve upon it in the future. Because we have tested it in the future, in the past, we have tested na our product, the yung when we launched Valheim server hosting, the design of the website was just a white page and some fancy typography. That's it. That's the state that we launched the product. Pero we were still able to make some sales, and that's when we were able to afford a branding effort and a marketing push for the product. And that, since the need was validated through the very very simple design of the dashboard and the website, we were able to raise enough money through sales to to pretty much bring the product higher and higher. And now we're pretty comfortable in terms of how the product is working. So yeah.
Hey, thank you for sharing those. And I see we have like a slew of problems and a lot of also solutions that somewhat just relate in certain ways. Meron din, I guess capacity really is something that's also important din. Kasi if hindi nyo rin naman kaya to afford, it's easy to say, get another designer, get another hire. Pero wala. Sometimes wala talaga. Ayun.
Uh,
Anyway,
if you
yeah.
hire another designer,
May onboarding pa.
you should be ready to
Yeah.
put your salary at risk in the future. So that's the reality
Mag-a-adjust.
of working in a startup. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, yun nga eh. Okay, so for an idea for how the next questions will be, so now we're gonna get into the Figma segment. So we've been talking a lot about design processes and all. So now I'll go medyo into the Figma questions na, and after that we'll be answering some Q&A because there have been a lot of questions that have been queued. So for the people who have been asking questions, thank you so much. For everyone else who sees the questions, you can see it in the Q&A tab. Just press like dun sa mga questions that you would also want to be asked first. So para aangat siya, ranking and whatever. So okay, we'll now go into the Figma portion of why we are discussing this. So bakit? Kaya the common thing with all you four, all five of us is we all use Figma. So, in what ways has Figma been useful in your design setting? And if you could mention, I guess, one Figma feature that has been the most useful for your team, could be something that just appeared yesterday, hint, hint, or something that has been there ever since. And if ever you do have any favorite or essential plugins, if you'd like a number, maybe like one or two essential plugins that you would like to share. Okay, sige. I'll give you some time to think while I decide on who to start with. I guess we can start with... Okay, I'll sit a chair. Nag-raise na siya.
I'll
Okay, go.
volunteer while everyone else is
Okay.
thinking.
Okay, go.
So in terms of like plugins, no, the one plugin that I really rely on a daily basis is Iconify. It's a plugin for Figma that lets you insert icons from a bunch of different icon packs that are available for open source around the internet. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that there are also other plugins that do icons, but this is the first. Ever since I started with Figma and ever since plugins was launched, this was the plugin that I've been using for icons ever since, and medyo it really stuck with me. And in terms of features, that really helped our team in terms of Figma. Um, the fact that I can share a Figma page to our engineers and and they could see and inspect some code or at least the spacing between certain elements. It's a really helpful thing. And yun nga, I don't the way I hand off my Figma files is not as simple as, hey, here's the Figma link, and these are the frames that you need. Ko na bahala dyan. What I do is I use another tool called Loom. It's a video recording extension on Chrome, which you can also download on your computer. And I use Loom to walk the engineer through how the design would work. Because I'm not really a fan of spending too much time trying to link the different screens together in prototyping mode. I used to do it back when I was new in the company, but I ultimately decided it's not worth the effort when I could just spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes running through the entire flow in a video that the engineer can reference at any time asynchronously. And yeah, that's the number one feature that I could that's really helpful for me because I could just aside from the video, I could give a link to the Figma file. They can see the hex codes for the colors. They can see the exact measurements for the margins that I want on a specific element. They can see the transparency of certain items. Like if I wanted something grayed out, I'll just do 50% layer visibility or something like that. Um, and yeah, even though even though the inspect tab isn't really perfect, what's important is that it gives the developer enough context that could help them develop the feature instead of like relying by eye on something like just giving the PNGs or something like that. So yeah.
Okay, nice. Thanks, Richard. And na all my developers who use the inspect tab a lot, because anyway, okay, I will stop. And now I guess, does anyone else want to volunteer? I'll give this na one a chance if ever. If wala, I will choose in 3, 2, 1. Okay, si Stella. Okay, go Stella, and the next one. Okay,
Volunteer
go
as
Stella.
tribute. Um, yeah, I think I'm a convert, guys. I am an auto layout components person, like that handshake emoji, right? Like that is how I go about my wireframing. So I can't live without that combination. I'm trying, Richard. I know you mentioned this earlier. I'm trying to stop myself from being way too perfectionist, like way too much of a perfectionist with the components. Not make them so perfect; they don't have to be. But yeah, that is for me the match made in heaven. I have just started exploring Figma plugins and introducing that into my prototyping workflows. So if you guys have like very specific plugins that you recommend, I've just looked into Measure, I think, and Figma Measure, right? And then there's another one. I'm gonna open it up right now. Designer DAO.
Nice.
Um,
It's
Design
okay.
Lint. Design Lint. That's something that I've also
Ah.
that I'm trying to explore. So I don't know, like if there are certain plugins that you guys consider to be like super foundational in your work, like please share that with me. I'd love to know what those are. I also tried out this one for annotations, but I mean, like I could do that manually as well. So
Mm-mm.
I mean,
What does the design linter, tama ba? Is that the name?
yeah, the
What does it
design,
do?
it kind of, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it cleans the if you select like a variety of components, it identifies what the missing styles are. Like if you've left something
Ah.
out, so it inspects like a selection of components. So I hope this isn't jargon for non-Figma
Yeah.
users. I
No,
mean,
it's okay. We're in a
people are
Figma. We're
Figma
in a
users, no?
we're in a
Um,
Friends of Figma event.
Friends of
I think
Figma.
that's fine.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I am exploring. I'm exploring different plugins. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think you'll learn. I'll go.
I'd like to add some additional plugins because I also opened Figma right now. So, some other considerations if you're a designer and you're making something for web, for mobile, it is also a good consideration to be compliant with the WCAG standards. And one of the WCAG standards is pretty much what it's pretty much the accessibility standards that people who are hard of hearing, who are hard of seeing, these are the standards that people can use to make browsing the web or using a product more easy for them. And one of the plugins that I can recommend for that is a plugin called Stark. It has both a free version and a paid version. Right now, I'm just on a free version because I unfortunately do not have enough capacity uh, to build out the accessibility as much as possible. But I stick to accessible colors as much as possible. So Stark has something to check the contrast, the vision simulator, and yeah, aside from the accessibility, I also have another plugin for animations, or rather animated SVGs or animated GIFs. Like if I need a loading animation, I use something called Lottie files, Lotti.
E?
Yeah, Lottie files. Just search it
Yeah.
on Figma.
Yeah.
Lottie files is a plugin for Lottie, I think it's an animation library for JavaScript, and yeah, it allows you to download a bunch of pre-made animations, whether it's like a person riding on a bicycle or a ball bouncing. So that's also a good plugin if you want to add some extra oomph to your design by adding some moving elements on it. And yeah, that's just what I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you for adding that, Richard. And for those that are sharing links and for plugins, go ahead. Thank you for everyone who's sharing links to plugins. Ang dami talaga na nasa community na available. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll go next to Monica. So if you can share some a Figma feature and also some Figma plugins that your team or you personally like or swear to.
Okay. We actually started Figma last year, before the pandemic started. So I found out about it through my boss, JR's. I think yung main selling point nun for me was yung collaborative feature niya and real time. So that time, I was already practicing on doing my work on Figma. So sketch pa nung una, and then transfer na sa Figma. And then COVID happened. So it was the perfect time to use its collaborative feature since we're all working from home. And then from time to time, we set a meeting to learn Figma, especially for non-designers in our team. So we have yung mga business design project managers and developers, since meron ding learning curve to learn a new tool. But because of Figma being intuitive and user-friendly, so mabilis naman siyang natutunan ng team. And then from then on, Figma became our day-to-day playground tool. So we use it for designing, brainstorming, lalo na FigJam, and prototyping. So for brainstorming, we use FigJam since it's all shapes and fun stickers. So there's creativity to it while we add our ideas at the same time. And then we have workshops dun na rin. So kumukuha ako ng mga templates sa community and then nire-reuse ko na lang siya. So super useful. So you can just duplicate it and tweak it according to your style. And then when it comes to client presentations, so we present a prototype and then afterwards, naturuan na namin yung clients namin to leave a comment. So it's helpful in managing our client feedback. So wala nang mga PDF or screenshots.
Yes. Oh my God. Agree. So
Tsaka
much.
madali rin to backtrack yung mga comments. Doon na lang yung discussion for efficiency and lesser meetings.
Agree.
And then for developer handoffs naman, so like what Richard mentioned, so yung inspect element, we usually have mga kick-off meetings. So usually ito ng mga developers naman na to, yung iba hindi pa familiar din with Figma. So nag-walk through meeting muna kami para lang ma-discuss paano yung structure ng design, dito yung style guide, dito yung inspect element, how to export, etc. Para mas maging smoother din and mas maging smoother yung process ng development. So what we do is we share a duplicate file. So nilabel namin siya ng project name and then internal. And then another project name, tapos yung duplicate na yun, developer. And then another duplicate project name, tapos for client. So dun yung lahat ng conversation. And then all comments and iterations andun na, so easily accessible. And then for the plugins naman, hindi ako masyadong ma-plugin, pero same din with Richard, AWY naman for accessibility. And favorite feature, I guess, auto layout and variants.
Yes, variants are the best as well. Kasi sobrang ang dami before components, tapos minsan naloloka ka na with all of the components. So I agree, variants is a godsend. Okay, thank you, Monica, for sharing some of that. And lastly, we have Angela. What feature from Figma and also plugin you'd like to share?
Feature first is the ability to share just the prototype. So you can technically prepare the slides and then hand it off, share a link to somebody super not technical, and the person wouldn't even have to see the two panels left and right. It's really just in slide deck form, and then it's kind of a powerful tool that you don't have to make a separate presentation. Technically, you can just make the screen itself a component, copy it over, and then it updates automatically. It all works as intended. So that's that for the feature. For the plugins, I I'm a sucker for documentation, I guess. So for me, it's really a plugin called AutoFlow. Basically, you don't have to prototype a bunch of stuff because it honestly eats time, and then the person who's receiving the prototype would also have to learn where to tap. So that's one thing. But if you see it on kind of like a whiteboard screen with all the arrows, no matter what your background is, and especially if you're an engineer, just references the file later on. And even as the designer who eventually forgets the flows, it's really helpful, like having a bunch of arrows linking to a bunch of different screens, and you get to check early as possible without prototyping then where it breaks, what screens you're missing, and what endpoints you have to get to. So that's one thing. And then another thing is a plugin called Similayer, or basically it's kind of like a find similar X. So either you combine a bunch of variables and then you find everything on the page. It's really helpful when you're at like the middle or towards the end part of your conceptual stage. You kind of just bring your design together, and then it becomes ready for devs after you kind of, at least consistency is there. You get to check your consistency as well. So those two are really can't work without those two.
Nice. Okay. Nice. Bubuksan ko lang si Similayer because this is familiar. Or I've used a similar
Yeah.
na plugin called ganun din eh, parang similar layer. Tapos it was actually built by someone, I think from forget somewhere in Southeast Asia. He actually gave a talk then kasi sa Friends of Figma before, like in the Philippines. But yeah, okay. Thanks, Angela, for sharing that. And thanks everyone for sharing lots of I don't know, lots of links to plugins, and also mentioning the stuff that we love with Figma. Okay, we'll go into some of the questions that we have here in the Q&A. So if you haven't type like on the questions that you want me to first ask our dear panel here, please do that now. Okay, but first I will start, or maybe like cue some of your own questions here. So first I'll start with AJ's question, which reads, how do you hand off your designs to the tech or dev or implementation team or person? Plus, how do you ensure that the design is followed? I guess this goes for all. If you'd like to answer the question, just raise your hand. Tapos, we'll give you the floor. Okay. Go. Go, Richard. Start ka muna.
Okay, so I think I sort of answered this earlier,
Yeah.
but the way we hand off stuff at Makisu is, me as a designer, I first, after finishing the design, I record a Loom video walking through the design, walking through the expected outcomes, what will happen when a specific button is pushed, what's the behavior of this thing, and yeah, when I'm finished recording that, I send it to our product channel for a specific product, and I ask them for comments if I missed anything, because my philosophy as a designer is I like co-designing with the engineers or the other people who might see yung other stuff that I didn't really catch on the first go around, and yeah, that's pretty much our process. Once the head of engineering says, okay, I'm good with this, this is approved, then the design goes through its own process for engineering, which I'm not really privy to, since I'm not really a part of that process. But in terms of like ensuring my design is followed, I pretty much just give the Figma file to them. I have full trust in our engineers in the company, because the way we work is we really give ownership to the people who are working on the product or working on a specific task, which is why if the engineer thinks that something doesn't really work, they'll talk to me and I'll try to update the design for documentation purposes. But yeah, trust is an important factor for me in the design and developer handoff. And of course, giving full transparency to how you want something to work and how you want something to look like is very, very important, which is why I tend to over communicate by using tools like Loom and if may kulang sa design, if there's something lacking in the design, I try to redesign it and then either send a very, very lengthy message to the developer explaining the changes, or I just record another video explaining the new changes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for sharing, Richard. Yeah, you did mention that earlier. How about the others? How do you turn on tuloy, turn over, turn over your designs? Turn on. My God. Okay. Maybe I
I
will
can
call.
share
Go.
something. Yeah. For me lang, it's a little manual work, but just creating a bunch of I guess post-its on auto layout and then literally like sticking it beside each screen. Super helps with the engineer, especially where they get the content. What happens when you tap this? What happens on an empty state? Like all the error messages. Um, it helps because it's just there always. They don't have to load anything else, not a prototype, not a bunch of pages, right? So it's really just literally tacked on to each screen. So it really helps when you document stuff right beside where your engineers will be viewing them. For me, I don't technically super rely on the inspect tab because sometimes just things break or more and more actually engineers are still preferring Zeppelin from my experience for some reason, and it's not really easy to import into Zeppelin. So I'm just onboarding them continuously and just trying to, I guess, like force them into loving Figma by documenting stuff.
Okay. Okay. What about Stella or Monica? Would you like to? Okay. You're good. You're good.
Same with Angela. Gumagawa rin ako ng mga post-it notes, tapos dinidikit ko na lang siya sa tabi ng mga pages. So, at the same time, I also have a style guide. So, nandun na yung mga error states, default and hover states. So, nandun na rin yung post-its kung for instructions and details. And then, as mentioned, we set a kickoff meeting with the developer to walk through yung mga pinaglalagay ko sa Figma. And then, weekly QA checks just to ensure na na-follow yung design.
Okay. 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 Thank you, Monica. Ikaw, Stella, would you like to say anything or okay.
Similar to what they've mentioned, like just heavy
Ah,
annotations. Yeah.
annotation. So annotation gang kayo. Okay. Okay, now next question. Speaking of day to day, how much of your time is spent working with people inside the design team? And how much time is spent with engineers and devs? So I guess we did kind of touch on this earlier. Maybe just to recap, like for everyone, maybe you could start with Stella. Okay. Yeah, kasi this is our
So thinking about my answer, then I hear my name. I was like, oh, good morning.
yeah.
I think my answer to this super interesting question lies in understanding what is needed, right? Like if I know that I need to kind of reevaluate my designs and I need a designer's perspective on that, like a little more of the user-centric perspective. If I know that is like the kind of problem I'm trying to solve, then I go to the design team. But if I know that the problem that I'm trying to solve, or like if a certain deliverable I know requires the perspective of, you know, a developer, then that's when I'd go to that respective person. I think the point I'm trying to make is like understanding what the objective is allows me to understand, okay, which perspectives do I need at this moment. So for example, if I'm funneling feedback, right? Or if I'm actually, no, a better example is if I have a prototype, I've just completed a prototype and I need to see if it's feasible, or I need to prioritize which of the particular features on this prototype we can launch out first. So I know that for that discussion, I have to sit down with our PM, I have to set it up with our devs, and that's the kind of discussion we're going to have. It would be counterproductive to do that with the design team, right? Because we just start ideating and coming up with like alternative designs and random ideas. So I think just knowing, right, like what is a desired outcome of like the you know the problem that I'm trying to solve, and then like framing it from there. That would be my approach, at least. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Stella. Okay. Anyone next? I will call, unless someone volunteers, I will call on Angela. I think you did mention it earlier now, but just to like recap lang what you said.
Yeah, with the way I personally work, it's really async. So I kind of it's a common understanding with everybody that I work with the multiple teams is it's just a mutual respect for time, I guess, because most people naman come from a background of having somebody just asking, "Hey, can you jump on a call for one quick second?" It really breaks your flow, right? So we've kind of just fostered a culture of okay, let's just do async work. If you have a question, just post it on Loom, post it anywhere. Have leave a comment on Figma, and at the end of the day. Do it and we're just all gonna be better for it and actually be productive. So it's really just that it's fostering the culture of not having to continuously communicate with people when you need it, but actually when they can or when they're available.
Okay. Great. So thank you for sharing that. Kasi async really is something that I see more and more. Kasi a lot of people are used to sync time because of well, coming from pre-pandemic, that now we're now forced, I guess, then into the remote workspace. It's really something new then to like not yung hindi ka kaagad na kakausap, parang hindi mo kaagad kausap, tapos parang you find out about it later na lang. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Angela. What about Monica?
With Stella and Angela. For us naman, we set a meeting with the developers to check on the feasibility of the ideas before committing these ideas to the client. Kasi minsan we have other creatives from other departments. So ito na yung mga creatives from above the line. So minsan may mga ideas sila and features na gusto na lang i-add sa website. Pero check muna namin to with the developers before the actual presentation kasi baka mamaya, yun nga, feature creep, feature scope. So, yun, checking muna. And, yeah.
Okay. Nice. Okay, thanks, Monica. And okay, so na-mention na, I guess, do you want to add anything, Richard? Kasi you have technically answered this question. Or okay ka na? Or
I guess I'll just say na yun nga, if you work in a startup, it is an important habit to over communicate. I would argue even if you're in a corporate agency freelance setting, it is really important to over communicate, as Angela mentioned in the chat. Loom plus comment plus self research, very very important. You know, if you just spend the extra 10 to 30 minutes trying to create the video, trying to create the documentation, it will save you hours of time of discussions with the necessary people. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now we have some questions that aren't ranked, so I will just first ask this na from Leroy. The question earlier pala was from Herbie Villafranca. So thank you, Herbie, for that question. Now we go to Leroy. So the question is, who decides what you design or build? Is that you? Is that someone else in your team or some other person in another team? Can you share that real quick? I guess, who do we start with? I see Stella's face. I want to pick Stella. Let's go, Stella. Ikaw muna.
I have a really hard time like trying
It's okay.
to control my emotions when like
It's okay. It's okay. Go.
No, this is, I think it depends, right? On actually, no, like who decides what I design and build, and the setup I'm in right now, it's the product owner or the product manager. Of course, like, that it's not him, it's not just him, coming out of, like pulling out all these ideas out of a magic hat, although if it is, there's something wrong there, right? But usually that involves like a sprint planning session where we understand the backlog, the product backlog. We look at the user stories that we have. We try to balance that out, or at least that's something we try to do, right? So it is a balance, I guess, Leroy. To properly answer your question, I'm just going around. it's a balance between the product owner's decision of him understanding the business objectives. The user also to a certain extent decides what we design and build because their feedback is part of that entire sprint planning process. Sometimes, at least in my scenario, I'm lucky enough to have some of my managers buy in. So, like when we do discuss features, like I am involved in that process more often than not. But it also depends on the setup, right, that you have in your own team. I think it depends talaga. Yeah, curious to know what the others think about this question because I feel like it's a case to case basis.
Okay, nice. Thanks, Stella. So now that we are going to be hearing from others, anyone else would like to share or would like to answer? Raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Go, Richard. Sige, go.
Nauumay na yung mga tao sa boses
No,
ko
no.
because I keep volunteering.
It's
But
okay.
with regards to the question, who decides what you design or build? Ultimately, since we follow the shape up methodology that um, na merong tao who are the ones shaping the direction of the product and the ones who are building, at the current state of the company, everyone who is involved in product is ultimately responsible for the stuff that they design or build, because it just makes sense na if you are the engineer, you need to be happy na that is the specific thing that you're doing for 6 weeks. If you are a designer, you need to be happy that this is something that you're going to be designing, because that's a very very quick road to burning out if you don't really like what you're doing. So I guess that's the benefit of working in a startup environment. You can really dictate what you really build and who really owns the product or the stuff that you're building. So yeah, at least in our company, everyone in the company, from HR, marketing, product, they all have equal say in what products are built. But in terms of I guess the business side of, will this thing be built or will we focus on this, it ultimately lands on the CEO, because
Mm.
once you consider the business side of things, siya talaga yung nakakaalam eh.
Mm-mm.
The CEO is the one who knows the financials and knows how to project the expenses and the revenue for all of that stuff. But generally, everyone in our team is very much welcome to give their ideas for products, whether that's a new product or an existing product, and we treat everyone with the same kind of respect, and we don't really have bias na we don't, as much as possible, we don't have the highest paid person in the room na nothing na opinion na just because you are the one who has been here since the start of the company and you are getting paid higher than me does not mean that your opinion is heavier than mine, diba? So we treat
Mm.
everyone as equal as possible.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Richard. And I guess I will ask Monica and Angela. Like, so I know that the nature of the agency and freelance life could mean clients ang magde-design and build, but or magde-decide pala rather on what you design and build. But maybe you could shed light on that. Maybe there's something else that we don't know. So I guess we'll go start with Monica first.
Yeah. For the agency side, so usually alam na ng mga clients kung ano yung gusto nila. They want a website, they want an app, pero usually check pa namin if website nga ba talaga yung solution or kailangan ba talaga app. Baka naman we can check if baka may mga other executions na pwede nating magawa. So usually ang nag-ideate are the creatives. So creatives from the ATL side and us creatives from the UX side. But everyone naman welcome to add in their ideas. Usually kapag meron na kaming mga internal, so lahat ng mga involved, account managers, PMs, strategists, even our chair mom. So it's really a collaboration.
Okay, nice, nice. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Monica. How about you, Angela?
For me, it's a couple of things, right? So for a mix of um, either looking at what their product can offer differently and capitalizing on that, whether it's against the competitor or just against their current feature set. It's one thing when it's a client side of project. And then the other thing that we do specifically for the product that we built with Node Shelf, we do some kind of impact effort analysis. It's basically just a 4 square grid where it's low effort to high effort and low value to high value. And we kind of plot the points there. And depending on where it lands on the grid, we assess how much time, how much resources it would take to either update the product feature or include it versus more like the thankless tasks almost that just improves the product and then nobody even notices, and then the others are just high effort and then it's also high impact. So that's one way to go about it when it's your own product and you have to assess your own business needs, I guess. But the other side of it also is just assessing resources aside. It's really the product itself or the business itself. It all boils down to that when it comes to our clients.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and also I just did remember and na-mention din kasi ni Angela and I guess na-mention din somewhat ni Monica yung something about deciding as well which features to get in. Kasi ultimately you do get the brief but then sometimes the solutions that they're presenting might not be actually what's best for them. So it's actually great that you also like put some time to think about that instead of just, pinasa lang, tas build it, tas wala na. Yan. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your answers. For now, since we are at the 8:45 mark, I will just keep these 3 questions by Herbie, Leroy, and Chevy as the things to ask. And maybe let's try to keep our answers in under 1 minute. Then after that, meron pa kasi akong like some questions para lang for the ending. Kasi, basta. Okay, so etong question na to, it's something being liked by a lot of people so far. I'll just ask that first. So Herbie asks something a bit more personal. Do you have a favorite or a memorable mentorship moment, either as a mentor or a mentee, that you could share? And what touched, why was that memorable to you? What happened and why? Yeah. Okay. Maybe who would like to share first? Kasi mukhang sige, go Richard. Sige. Go.
Since we're since my time pressure. All right.
Well,
So, in terms of like the mentorship side of things, I don't really have much to contribute for that since I've only handled an intern one time. But in terms of like the mentee moment, I guess I would share na I've been mina-mentor ako since college. And my mentor was really responsible for the one to push me to really try out UI design at first, and then introducing me the concept of UX design. And I guess my favorite moment from that is when my mentor pushed me to actually apply for masters abroad. And yeah, thankfully I got accepted to the program abroad, and now I'm just really waiting for the visa to arrive, and hopefully I'll leave this around this month. So yeah, because my mentor really believed in me, kept giving me inspiration, kept pushing me towards this path of design, and now going towards masters. So my favorite moment is, my mentor really believed me from the start, and now I have the once in a lifetime opportunity of really flying out of the Philippines and being given a chance to start a career abroad, and basically being based outside of the Philippines and being exposed to a lot of different stuff.
all right. Thanks, Richard, for sharing that. Who else would like to share? Okay, go, Monica.
For me, mentorship about Figma. Kapag share ko na yung mga learnings ko. Actually, I also check your post, G, sa Figma from Philippines.
Hello? Okay.
So, yung mga sinashare mo doon, sinashare ko rin with my team. So, inaaral ko muna siya and then doon ko siya tinuturo sa team ko. And I think, what yung favorite ko doon and memorable kapag nakita kong kaya na nilang gawin on their own. Lalo na mga non-designers ng mga to. So, parang nakaka-proud lang kapag alam na nilang gawin.
Nice. Yeah, sobra. Actually, I understand what you mean. Kasi ganyan din naman, like, teaching Figma to like others, tapos parang finally they get it, tapos parang, wow, ang
Yes.
galing. Tapos parang, yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing, Monica. What about Angela? Yeah. Okay. Would you like?
For me, I mentioned her earlier. We hired her from school, and then it's fun to watch someone learn to love tech without knowing that she actually would want to learn and love tech. It's one thing to just know that you want it, right? But it's another to just actually dive into real product work and then finding that you actually like the product work. I feel like it's not a common path. So it's kind of rewarding if you get to teach somebody how to uh, go through the startup life and then the product life as well. Not really just it's a different feeling, I guess, when you're able to affect somebody else's career.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, that's great also. So, bale parang you mentored her in a way, or medyo share lang din kayo in learning sabay.
Yeah, because this person kasi really didn't want or wasn't intended to be like a designer or like a UX researcher or even a
Yeah.
project manager. It's just happenstance, I
It
guess.
just
So, but
happened.
yeah, so it's kind of nice when things work out that way. Then
Okay. Yeah, that's great to hear. Thanks for sharing, Angela. Okay, now we have Stella. What would you like to share?
Just being on the other end of the spectrum, right, as a young designer in the industry, one mentor that I've had since my first year of university. He was assigned to me when I was a student, and it's just been such a great experience. We still keep in touch to this day. He replies to my stories on Instagram when he sees I'm doing anything related to design. But one thing that he really instilled in me from the very beginning that I didn't realize he was training in me was like this go for it kind of attitude. Like you write a paper, send it somewhere, just go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? Or like, hey, like, you want to break into an industry, like, just go for it. What do you have to lose? Literally that kind of mindset. So every time I have conversations with him, he's always asking, okay, what's the next move, where are we going next? And I think that kind of spirit and a mentor is it's so energizing. And I think that's something, if I ever had the chance to mentor somebody, I'd love to pass that on somehow. So yeah, that would be my answer to this question.
All right. Thanks, Stella, for sharing. And we've had lots of wonderful mentors and mentee experiences in this panel discussion. Okay, thank you for your answers. So now our second to the last question for the Q&A portion is from Chevy. So as a designer or researcher, how do you interact with the users if you are conducting an interview or asking for something? And that's very important now, given that it's the pandemic. It's not really so easy to like interview people now, since you don't show your face to other people like in person. So yeah, would anyone like to quickly share maybe just one or two people para yeah, or I guess okay, sige, let's go. Sino? I will call on Monica first.
Research, we usually ask, nagpapahelp kami with our account managers. Usually mga surveys lang and interviews. Pero kapag ka-interviews, so parang nag-a-ask na lang kami ng mga kung sino yung pasok din sa target na persona. And then we just set a call and then yung question. So hindi siya actually naging, since we're in an ad agency, hindi laging napapractice din or yung interviews. Unlike nung before pandemic na pwede kang as in personal na kausapin yung user. So ngayon, since very fast-paced din, mas on surveys yung sa research namin.
Okay.
Madalang lang yung sa mga interviews.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Monica. What about si Stella?
Incentive is the
Incentive.
answer. I think it's the one thing that we owe to respondents, right, for giving us their feedback and their time. So I think coming up with a figure that's up to you and your product owner and the budget that you guys have. But I think that providing incentive is super important. It's an important part of the process, additional to what Monica said with the test plan and choosing how to go about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Stella, for sharing that. What about you, Angela? Do you get the chance to like do testing then on your side?
We used to do like live coffee shop testing in that sense. Like we would literally like shadow people, observing people using the product, no matter what stage it is in the process. But nowadays, COVID season, it's more about reading the support Zendesk app reviews, really like what people are saying, and then keeping that line open. You can reach out to the users on Zendesk directly, and then the more negative the feedback, the more the more kulit you have to be almost to keep them on track, because sometimes it's just that you have to just understand where the frustration comes from. So basically it's really just a bunch of data right now that we keep track of, and then when something sticks out, that's when we reach out to the person, and then whether that's written via email or just the comments in Zendesk, or if you can set up a Zoom call, it's all, everything's open. And then as Stella mentioned, incentives, whether it's a gift card or whatever it can be, it's super helpful.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Angela. And lastly, for the chart, I do remember that you mentioned that you might not have the time, like given your setup, to do research or user testing. But how do you get to know your users more? I guess if you'd like to repeat or mention that.
I get other people to do the job. The joke. For us, when we were initially trying to launch Valheim server hosting, I tried posting incentives, but since it is a very hard segment to target, if you are from the Philippines, imagine we were trying to research on people who live in who live in the United States and play this specific game and use these specific services, and knowing how gamers like to be anonymous online, it's almost impossible for us to run a traditional UX research study for the product. So what we did instead is we launched the product first, but we also had a customer support channel on our product. So very similar to Angela's approach with Zendesk. For our product, we use Crisp. It's like Intercom if you're familiar with that, but it's the cheaper version of Intercom, but equally as good. So it's through Crisp that we're able to understand the problems that our users encounter with their product. Like, for example, if we have some users who are confused in a certain flow in the product, that's when the marketing or sales or operations team tells me, oh, our users are encountering this, and that's additional insight for me as a designer to try and update the design to account for it. And there was also an instance where we figured out that our demographic of users isn't really the traditional demographic of gamers. A lot of our users were actually people who did not really like the technical side of server hosting. Like, these are not super technical people. These are not 20-year-old Gen Z people who know how to open the Valheim folder in Steam. These are just regular people who are trying to play with their friends, and some of them are even like 40 years old, 30 years old. And we only really found out through this, not through our Crisp channel, but by exposing a phone number and address on our website to add additional like legitimacy to our product. Because for some segments of users, they are not really digital native. They don't know what that little messenger bubble on the lower right of the screen says. Some of them will try and find the phone number of the company and try to actually call it. So that's how we got some that's how we perform your research right now. Essentially, I personally don't do it because I am not the person equipped to help them with their tech support questions, but we do gain some insights from our from our digital channels and from our traditional channels like phone number.
Okay, thanks. And that's pretty interesting that you did add the number para to show legitimacy, because that is a valid point. Not everyone would think about chatting, even though it's something that's normal for us now na who live in the digital world, I guess. Okay, so I know that it's 1 minute to 9, and this is technically just supposed to be until 9, but we will extend a bit for like 5 to 10 minutes to answer this last question, and it actually connects to the last few questions that I also wanted to ask everyone here. Because Leroy's question was, is everyone here an individual contributor, or how do you think about your career path, or how do you plan your career path, which is the individual contributor versus manager track? And the next question that I was actually going to ask everyone is, what are the growth opportunities in your design setting, and what tips do you have for designers who'd like to pursue a job in your design setting? So I guess that could lead you could first answer Leroy's question, and then eventually think about like how people can thrive in their careers wherever you are working. So I'll give the floor first to Stella. Okay. Go, Stella. You're-
I'm like wrapping my head around the question.
I saw the loading.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, processing, right?
Yeah.
So it's 9
No.
p.m.
Yeah.
Sorry, when you say individual contributor, what does that pertain to exactly?
Sorry, yeah. So to explain, individual contributors are it's a term that's usually used when you're the person that's doing the hands-on work, like the
Right.
person that's doing the heads down work. You shouldn't be disturbed for certain moments, because meetings will actually be the bane of your existence, because it keeps eating from your design time. And I know that for a fact, because I have gone through that personally. Versus a manager who's more focused on managing or management. So whether that be the product,
Right.
people, or whatever, it's you're not necessarily doing design work per se, like for example in Figma doing mock-ups or prototypes,
Got
but
it.
maybe you'd be the person that's helping the other designers have things to think about to eventually do design. So
Okay.
something like that. Okay, go ahead, Stella.
Clearly, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I didn't even know that, right? But
Okay.
I think how I think about my career path, I really think it's just a matter of trying out everything that's available to me, like all these different challenges and opportunities that I have, to just take them on and learn more about myself in the process. I've also recently just gotten in touch with a career coach, like my own career coach, to help me navigate through these questions that I have and to be more self-aware. So I think just practicing that self-awareness, I think for me at least in the position I'm at. um yeah, curious to know what others will think.
So I guess we can go on next to Richard. So oh wait, you're on mute.
Question, sorry, yun yung
Ah,
reference ko eh.
I
Ano yan?
sorry. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Sorry, the question was
the individual contributor, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
like
for
growth.
me, this is actually a topic sa latest na one-on-one namin ng boss ko a few months ago. Right now, we both acknowledge that I am the individual contributor, and in the event that we're going to scale up the product team, either by adding another designer or adding another developer, I would really have to choose which path I have to take. Since I am the one with what you can call as institutional knowledge when it comes to designing a product, it is only natural for me to lean towards being more of a manager type of person than individual contributor. But right now, really my perspective on that entire IC versus manager thing is I'm going to roll with the punches and bring my career to where it makes sense in my current company. So for my current company, um, I'm very much willing to be an IC or a manager depending on who my boss wants to bring to the company. Like if my boss finds a senior designer, like director of design level, I won't force myself to be a manager type. I will gladly be an individual contributor because not only will I benefit from that, but the company will also benefit from that. Like I have no intention to be very mayabang, for a lack of better words. Just because I was the first designer in the company doesn't mean that I have to be the manager. I'm perfectly okay with being the individual contributor, or vice versa. If my boss decides, or if my boss and me decide to make a bet on a very very promising designer, I will be very much willing to move towards a management role, and I'll spend my time trying to learn how to be a good manager, try to read up on books, and basically try to fill the need for a design manager for the company. So yeah, that's where I currently am in my company.
Okay. Thank you, Richard, for sharing that. What about Angela?
For me, it's really a matter of asking yourself what you enjoy doing. And it shouldn't have to be one or the other. I feel like some people also enjoy doing both things, or either mix in certain days, or mix like mornings for dealing with people, afternoon for heads down work. It could be a mixture, and then you only learn what you want to do as you go through them. So I feel like you can be both if you want to. You can be just one if you want to be an introvert and just do your own thing. That's fine too. Just do you. It's really dependent on the person.
Okay, okay. But for you specifically, like
For
how
me
do you
specifically, I feel like I juggle a ton of different hats. Like I manage different teams depending on the client that I work with, and also with a couple of companies that I am a part of. And also for the studio, it's really individual contributor also. So you can be anything. And as Kath mentioned in the chat, more and more companies are open to hiring. Not limited locally in wherever they are. So if that means you become an individual contributor for a product that you wanna work on, but not necessarily have a chance to work on pre COVID, and that's a chance that you have to take also.
Okay, okay. Thank you for sharing that, Angela. Lastly, we have Monica.
In my case, I'm doing both managerial and design work. So I set the design direction and oversee our projects. But at the same time, I also do the design. But when it comes to the projects and sometimes mga pitch, everyone is a contributor and part of the ideation and brainstorming process.
Okay. So, okay. So everyone here does wear a lot of hats, no? Technically, parang no, hindi ka masyadong like fully focused lang din on just managing people, no? You also still do a bit of some IC work or design work, like heads down. Okay. Oh, so that's interesting to hear. So, any tips that you have for designers who'd like to pursue your job in your work setting, for everyone, just chime in. So after this is the last question. So after this, we'll just do the ending remarks kind of thing. So if you have anything, like just one tip to share for the people in the room or the people in the chat, go.
First, I guess. For
Yeah,
me,
go.
just a couple of things. Time management. So you present your work to clients and to your team. You respect their time if you do that. And then another thing is just finding time to always learn more and better yourself. Whether you set up a couple of hours a day, or just one day out of the week. To not slack off and actually just learn something, no matter what the size is. Actually, listened to an audiobook recently. It's called Make Time. Basically, the start of that book is just saying make one highlight a day, and then make sure to set a time for that. It could be early in the morning, or whatever you're comfortable with. Just give it a listen. It's really just a quick listen, maybe like one day of while you're working and just listening to it. It's very interesting to just set that time, and it helps in a lot of ways, whether it's like eating or working. It goes in a variety of topics, so just check it out too. Yeah,
Okay.
that Richard linked to it.
Okay, nice. Thanks, Angela. Anyone else? Go, Monica. Go ahead.
I think in my 8 years of working in the ad industry, it's not always fun since there are a lot of rejections and revisions along the way. Kaya you have to learn to accept criticism from your work and don't take it personally, but instead learn to bounce back and learn from that experience. And also enjoy the work that you do because otherwise it will always feel like work. So if you want to be a UX designer in an ad agency, so expect that your work will also be a mix of UX and campaign work. And always have a beginner's mindset. So you should always be open to learning. So ang problem kasi sometimes we think na alam na natin lahat and that's the curse of knowledge. So you can always ask questions or research on it, and I suggest that you surround yourself with people who inspire you kasi they are there to help you grow. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Thanks for that, Monica, and very inspiring as well. Anyone else? One tip for people who wanna go to church.
My number one tip for people who want to design for a startup is be very, very open to change. As a startup designer, you will not be in your comfort zone. You will not have mentors. You will not have people who will help you. For some startups or product companies, you are building the future of how some things are being built, or you're building something that hasn't been done before. So you really have to be a sponge, and you really have to be open to change and get inspiration from wherever you can, whether it's from your office mates, from internet, from Twitter, from Reddit, or whatever. You really have to be open to change and open to changing your opinions on certain things. You, even if you have strong opinions on how some things will be on how some things are done, you should be open to challenging these opinions, because as a startup designer, you are essentially putting your career in very, very hard mode, like yun nga, because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, agree. And that is very helpful advice, lalo na for a startup, because a lot of things can change in a startup with just like that, like just a blink or a sleep like time, like a day. Yeah, thank you for that, Richard. Lastly, Stella, do you have anything to share or a tip?
Yeah, I think if there's one tip I can give for anyone who's interested or is currently in the setup that I'm in a corporate setting, I think it would just be, take things one day at a time. There is no rush to be the paramount, designer in the industry right now. Like, I feel like, learning takes time, slow learning as well. There's so much value in that. So, absorb, be a sponge, learn, reflect, and try again the next day. But yeah, take things one day at a time. There's no rush to be the best right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that, Stella. And I guess on that note, we end this. This is the last question and the last tick. So we end our discussion. So thank you everyone. Thank you Monica, Richard, Stella, and Angela for taking the time, these two and some whatever minutes time to share your experiences and also to talk about what it is working in an agency, a startup, a corporate, the corporate setting, and also in freelance. So before we go, Red will be taking a screenshot of us all here. So I don't know, maybe Red, paano natin 'to gagawin? Let me know na lang in the chat, since you are not in the call, like up here right now in presenter mode, on when you'd like to take the screenshot. But yes, also for the people who attended, thank you so much for your questions and for the discussions. It was very lively here in the chat, and we have also shared some pretty good insights here in, even if there is a lot of discussions happening in this quick bevy event. Yeah, okay. Sige. I'll say 1, 2, 3 daw, sabi ni Red sa akin. Okay, so I'll just go insert high five from FigJam. Yeah. Well, we're not in Figma, so mag-high five. Gaganyan na lang tayo. Okay, so I'll just say 1, 2, 3. So just pose, and then for 1, 2, 3, Red will take a screenshot. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Yay! Okay. Okay, I think that's good. Let me know, Red, if that was okay. I will take a screenshot as well for posterity. But sige. I'll also take a, sige. Smile ulit. So, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you everyone for that. Okay, so I have saved it. So may backup ako pero si Red yung mag-share. So again, paulit-ulit ako. Thank you. But yes, super thank you for everyone, the 44 people who are still here attending this event. Have a great Friday. I hope you're safe because it is raining here in my end, but I hope it's not like raining in your end. Hope you're safe and well, lalo na in this pandemic. Thank you for the time. And the recording will be up soon after siguro in the weekend. It is recorded. So, yeah. But other than that, we have finished. All right. So, thank you so much, everyone. And take care. Bye. Bye, everyone. Okay.